People always find this funny. I'm worth what? No 140 billion now, something like that, and I still live in the same house I bought in 1958. Cost me 31,500. People think that's crazy. They say, "Warren, why don't you buy a mansion? Why don't you live like you're rich?" And I tell them, I am living like I'm rich. Because being rich to me, it's not about the stuff you own. It's about the freedom you have. And freedom that comes from living below your means, not above them. I'm 94 years old now, and I've been living below my means for my entire life, really even when I had nothing. Even when I was making $30 a week delivering newspapers. And that habit, that one simple habit, it's probably worth more to me than any investment I've ever made. Because living below your means, it gives you options. It gives you power. It lets you say no. It lets you wait. It lets you invest when others can't. And over time, over decades, it creates wealth, real wealth. So today, I want to talk about that, about the power of living below your means, because it's simple, but it's everything. Well, let me start with something basic. What does living below your means actually mean? It means you spend less than you make. That's it. If you make $50 in a year, you spend $40,000 or $35 or $30. Whatever you make, you spend less. Sounds simple, right? And it is simple. But here's the thing. Most people don't do it. Most people spend exactly what they make, or worse, they spend more than they make. They go into debt. They borrow against their future. They live paycheck to paycheck. And they wonder why they're stressed about money all the time. You see, I learned this lesson early, really early, from my father. My dad was a stockbroker during the Depression. Saw people lose everything. Saw families destroyed by debt and living beyond their means. And he taught me something. He said, "Warren, it doesn't matter how much you make. What matters is how much you keep." And that stuck with me for my whole life, because he was right. You can make $1 million a year, but if you spend $1 million a year, you've got nothing. You're just running on a treadmill, working to maintain a lifestyle. But if you make $50,000 and spend $30,000, you've got $20,000 left over. And that $20,000, that's power. That's freedom. That's what lets you build wealth. Well, let me tell you about my house again, because people really fixate on this. They think it's some kind of stunt or publicity thing. But it's not. It's just how I live. I bought that house in 1958. 5 bedrooms, nothing fancy, just a nice, comfortable house in a good neighborhood in Omaha. And I've lived there ever since, 67 years now. People say, "Warren, you could buy any house in the world. You could have mansions, multiple mansions," and they're right. I could, but why would I? My house is comfortable. It's got everything I need. I know my neighbors. I'm close to the office. What would a bigger house give me? More rooms I don't use, higher maintenance costs, more staff to manage. That doesn't sound like freedom to me. That sounds like work, like complication. See, every dollar you spend on lifestyle, that's a dollar that can't compound. If I had bought $1 million house instead of a $30,000 house, that extra $970,000, it couldn't have been invested. It couldn't have grown, couldn't have compounded. And over 67 years at 10% a year, that 970,000 becomes, well, hundreds of millions of dollars. So every time I chose not to upgrade my lifestyle, I was really choosing to be richer in the future. That's the trade-off. Lifestyle now or wealth later. I think about this in terms of freedom. The less you need to spend, the less you need to earn. And the less you need to earn, the more freedom you have. If you need 100,000 a year to maintain your lifestyle, to pay for your big house and your fancy cars and your expensive vacations, then you need a job that pays 100,000 or investments that generate 100,000. And that limits you. It puts pressure on you. It means you can't afford to take risks. Can't afford to say no to things you don't want to do. You're trapped by your own lifestyle. But if you only need 30,000 a year, if you've kept your lifestyle modest, then you've got options, real options. You can take a lower-paying job you love. You can start a business. You can retire early. You can invest aggressively because you don't need the money right away. That's freedom. That's what money should buy, not stuff. Freedom. Well, let me tell you about compound interest, because this is where living below your means really pays off. See, every dollar you save, every dollar you don't spend on lifestyle, that dollar can be invested. And once it's invested, it starts growing, compounding. Let's say you save 10,000 a year and you invest it at 10%. After 1 year, you've got 11,000. After 10 years, you've got about 100,000. After 30 years, you've got nearly $2 million. $2 million from saving $10 a year. That's the power of compounding. But here's the key. You can only do that if you're living below your means. If you're spending everything you make, you've got nothing to invest, nothing to compound. And that means 30 years from now, you're still broke, still living paycheck to paycheck, still stressed about money. You see, there's this trap people fall into. I call it the lifestyle treadmill. It works like this. You get a job, you make some money, and you increase your lifestyle to match. You get a nicer apartment, you buy a car, you go out to eat more, you buy nicer clothes, and it feels good. It feels like success. Then you get a raise and you increase your lifestyle again. Bigger apartment, nicer car, more expensive restaurants. And this keeps happening. Your income goes up and your lifestyle goes up with it until one day you realize you're making 100,000 a year and you've got nothing saved because your lifestyle ate it all. The way you avoid this trap is by not increasing your lifestyle when your income increases. Keep living like you did when you were making less and bank the difference. Invest the difference. Let it compound. That's how you build wealth. Not by earning more, but by living on less. Well, let me give you a personal example. When I started Buffett Partnership in 1956, I was making pretty good money, better than most people my age. But I didn't change my lifestyle. I kept living in my modest house, kept driving my old car. And every dollar I made, every dollar beyond what I needed to live, I reinvested back into the partnership, back into stocks. And that money compounded year after year, decade after decade. And by the time I was 40, I was worth millions. Not because I earned some huge salary, but because I lived below my means and let the money compound. That's the secret. That's the whole game, People think rich people spend a lot of money, and some do. The ones you see in magazines and on TV, they've got the yachts and the private jets and all that stuff. But you know what? Most of them aren't that rich. Not really, because they're spending it all. They look rich, but they're not actually rich. The people who are really rich, the ones with real wealth, you usually can't tell by looking at them. They drive normal cars. They live in normal houses. They dress normally because they understand something. They understand that spending money doesn't make you rich. Keeping money makes you rich. Investing money makes you rich. Well, let me talk about what I do spend money on, because I'm not a miser. I'm not sitting in the dark eating ramen noodles to save money. I spend money on things I value, things that actually improve my life. I spend money on good food, not fancy food, but good food. I like McDonald's. I like Dairy Queen. I spend money on books, on learning, on experiences with friends and family. But I don't spend money on status symbols, on things that are just for show, expensive watches, fancy cars, designer clothes, because those things, they don't make me happier. Not really. They'd just be things to maintain, things to worry about, things to ensure and protect and deal with. And that sounds exhausting, not freeing. You see, there's this concept I think about hedonic adaptation. It means you get used to whatever your lifestyle is, no matter what it is. If you live in a mansion, after a few months it's just your house. If you drive a Ferrari, after a few months it's just your car. The excitement wears off and you're back to your baseline happiness. So why spend the money? Why take on the costs and complications for something that won't make you happier long term? Better to keep the money, invest it, let it compound, and maintain a lifestyle that's comfortable but not extravagant. That's the sweet spot. That's where freedom lies. Well, let me tell you about debt, because this is the opposite of living below your means. Debt means you're living above your means. You're spending money you don't have yet. And debt is dangerous. Really dangerous. See, when you borrow money, you're borrowing against your future earnings. You're saying, I'll pay this back later when I'm earning more money. But what if you don't earn more money? What if you lose your job? What if something goes wrong? Now you're stuck. You've got debt payments you can't afford, and your options disappear. You can't take risks, can't pursue opportunities, can't say no to jobs you hate because you need the money to pay the debt. That's not freedom. That's slavery. I've avoided debt my entire life, personal debt anyway. I've never carried a credit card balance, never borrowed money for a car, never had a mortgage after the first few years because I understood debt is the enemy of living below your means. If you're in debt, you're not living below your means. By definition, you're living above them, and that's a recipe for stress and financial trouble. Now, there are some kinds of debt that can make sense. Student loans. Maybe if you're investing in education, that'll increase your earning power. A reasonable mortgage if you're buying a modest house you can afford. But consumer debt, credit cards, car loans for a fancy car you can't afford, that's just bad decision making. That's lifestyle inflation funded by future earnings, and it'll trap you, keep you from ever building wealth. Well, let me talk about something else: the difference between needs and wants. One of the keys to living below your means is understanding this difference. Needs are things you actually need to survive and function: food, shelter, basic clothing, health care. Wants are everything else: the nicer car, the bigger house, the designer clothes, the expensive vacations. Now, wants aren't bad. There's nothing wrong with wanting nice things, but you've got to be honest with yourself. You've got to recognize when you're buying a want, not a need. Because needs are non-negotiable. But wants can be delayed or eliminated. And every want you don't buy, that's money you can save and invest. You know, I see people all the time who confuse wants with needs. They say, "I need a new car." But what they mean is they want a new car. Their old car works fine. It gets them where they need to go, but they want something nicer, newer, more impressive. And look, I get it. I understand the desire. But if you give in to every desire, every want, you'll never build wealth. You'll always be broke. The key is delayed gratification. It's being able to say, "I want this, but I don't need it, so I'm going to wait." And that waiting, that patience, that's what builds wealth. Well, let me tell you about a concept from Charlie Muir. Charlie was my partner for 60 years. Brilliant man. Passed away recently. Miss him every day. Charlie used to say, "The best armor of old age is a well-spent youth." What he meant was, the choices you make when you're young, they determine what your life looks like when you're old. If you spend everything when you're young, if you live for today and don't save, then when you're old, you'll be broke. You'll have to keep working. You won't have options, won't have freedom. But if you live below your means when you're young, if you save and invest, then when you're old, you'll be rich. You'll have security. You'll have freedom. You'll have peace of mind. That's the trade-off. Gratification now or security later. And most people choose now because later feels far away, but later comes fast, really fast. Trust me. You see, I'm 94 now, and I can tell you the last 50 years went by in a blink. It feels like yesterday I was 45, just getting started with Berkshire Hathaway, and now I'm 94. And I'm grateful. Grateful that I live below my means. Grateful that I saved and invested because now I don't have to worry about money ever. I can do what I want, give away most of my fortune, help people, support causes I believe in. That's freedom. That's what living below your means for 75 years bought me. Well, let me talk about something practical. How to actually do this, how to live below your means. First, you've got to know what you're spending, track it, every dollar, because if you don't know where your money's going, you can't control it. So for a month or two, write down everything you spend. Every coffee, every meal, every purchase, and at the end, look at it. Really look at it, you'll probably be surprised. Most people are. They don't realize how much they're spending on small things that add up. 5 valves here, 10 there. It adds up fast. Second, make a budget. Figure out your needs. The essentials: rent, food, transportation, insurance. Add those up. That's your baseline, your needs. Everything else, that's wants. And wants can be cut. Decide how much you want to save, 20%, 30%, 50%, whatever it is. Pay yourself first. That money goes into savings and investments before you spend anything on wants. And then, with what's left, you can spend on wants, but not more. Never more. Third, avoid the temptations. Unsubscribe from marketing emails. Don't go to the mall just to browse. Don't watch TV shows about luxury lifestyles. Because the more you expose yourself to spending temptations, the harder it is to resist. Make it easy on yourself. Remove the temptations. And fourth, find free or cheap ways to enjoy life. You don't need to spend a lot of money to be happy, to have a good life. Some of my happiest times, they've been free. Playing bridge with friends, reading a good book, having a conversation over a meal. Those things, they don't cost much, but they're what make life good. Not the expensive stuff, the simple stuff. I want to address something. People sometimes say, Warren, it's easy for you to say live below your means. You're a billionaire. You can afford to live modestly. But that's backwards. I'm not a billionaire because I can afford to live modestly. I'm a billionaire because I did live modestly. I lived below my means when I had nothing. When I was delivering newspapers, when I was in college, when I was starting my career, and that habit, that discipline, that's what created the wealth. The wealth didn't create the habit. The habit created the wealth. You see, living below your means, it's not about deprivation. It's not about being miserable or denying yourself everything you enjoy. It's about being intentional, about choosing carefully, about valuing the right things. It's about understanding that true wealth isn't what you spend, it's what you keep. And true freedom, it comes from needing less, not having more. Well, let me tell you about a friend of mine, a doctor, makes about $400 a year, and he's broke, always stressed about money, always worried about paying bills. How's that possible? Making $400,000 a year and broke because he spends $400,000 a year or more. He's got $1 million house with a big mortgage, 2 luxury cars with payments, private school for the kids, country club membership. All this stuff that looks impressive, that makes him look successful, but he's not successful. Not really. He's trapped. He can't retire. Can't take a sabbatical. Can't switch to a lower-paying job he'd enjoy more because he needs that $400,000 to maintain the lifestyle. That's not success. That's a prison. A comfortable prison maybe, but a prison nonetheless. You see, I'd rather make $50,000 and spend $30,000 than make $400,000 and spend $400,000 because in the first case, I've got freedom options, savings, growing, compounding. In the second case, I've got nothing but stress and obligation. That's the power of living below your means. It's not about how much you make. It's about how much you keep, how much you save, how much you invest. Well, let me talk about one more thing, legacy. See, when you live below your means, when you save and invest, you're not just building wealth for yourself. You're building it for your children, your grandchildren, for causes you care about. I'm giving away almost all of my money to charity to help people who need it more than I do. And I can do that because I lived below my means. If I'd spent it all, if I bought mansions and yachts and jets, there'd be nothing left to give away. But I didn't. I kept it modest and the money compounded. And now I can help millions of people. I can fund medical research, education, poverty relief. That's meaningful. That's a legacy. And it only happened because I lived below my means. You know, when I think about my life, when I think about what I'm proudest of, it's not the money. It's not being rich. It's the freedom. The fact that I've been able to do exactly what I wanted for 75 years. I wake up every morning and I do what I love. I work with people I like. I live in a place I enjoy. I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. That's freedom. And that freedom, it came from living below my means, from not trapping myself with an expensive lifestyle, from keeping my needs low. Well, let me start wrapping this up. Living below your means, it's simple, but it's powerful. It's the foundation of wealth, the foundation of freedom. And anyone can do it. You don't need to be smart. You don't need to be lucky. You don't need to earn a huge salary. You just need to spend less than you make and invest the difference. That's it. That's the whole thing. But most people won't do it because it requires discipline. It requires saying no to the new car, to the bigger house, to the expensive vacation. It requires delayed gratification, patience, the ability to think long term. And that's hard, really hard. But if you can do it, if you can live below your means for years, for decades, you'll build wealth. Real wealth, not just money, but freedom, options, security. And that's what it's all about. That's what money should buy. You see, I'm 94 years old. I've lived through wars and recessions and bull markets and crashes. I've seen everything. And the one constant, the one thing that's made the biggest difference is living below my means. That habit, that simple habit, it's worth more than any investment strategy, more than any stock pick or market timing, because it works. It always works. If you spend less than you make and you invest the difference, you'll get rich. It might take time. It might take decades, but it'll happen. And more important than getting rich, you'll be free. Free from worry, free from stress, free from the trap of needing to earn more and more just to maintain your lifestyle. So, here's my advice as clearly as I can say it. Live below your means starting today. Keep your lifestyle modest. Don't upgrade. Don't upgrade every time you get a raise. Avoid debt, especially consumer debt. It'll trap you. Track your spending. Know where every dollar goes. Distinguish between needs and wants, and be ruthless about cutting wants. Save 20, 30, 50% of your income, whatever you can manage, and invest it. Let it compound for years, for decades. Don't try to impress people with what you spend. Nobody cares anyway. And remember, freedom comes from needing less, not from having more. That's the secret. That's everything. Well, I suppose that's all I've got. The power of living below your means. It's not complicated. It's not sexy. It's not going to make headlines. But it works. It really, really works. And if you do it, if you make it a habit, a way of life, you'll look back one day, years from now, decades from now, and you'll be wealthy. You'll be free, and you'll be glad you did it. I know I am. Every single day. I'm grateful I learned this lesson early from my father, from my teachers, from my own experience. And I really hope you'll learn it, too, because it'll change your life just like it changed mine. Live below your means. It's that simple and that powerful.